All right, so I'm Amanda Joy, and you're listening to Radio Shields Northeast, and it's the Wednesday Wellbeing Show. And before Christmas, we had an amazing guest on, James, who is a spiritual teacher. He's a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine and also a yoga and Pilates teacher, and he possibly has a million other things on that list that I've not suggested or not mentioned. And we were talking with him about his life journey. And how he'd spent some time in Africa, and when he was at university as well, he kind of was partying quite a bit, and then he discovered meditation, and this took him on an amazing journey, which consisted of having 5 years in India, where he was teaching English for 6 months, and then he journeyed north to the foothills of the Himalayas, where he really decided that he was going to focus on his spiritual journey. And after reading inspirational books and receiving different teachings, he had some moments of what can only be described as just utter bliss, where he really had that sense, that feeling that everything was divine, that everything was one, was unified. And he really began to connect with that philosophy of non-duality. He then went on to be initiated into Yoga Nanda, and then went on to Rishikesh, where he had this moment where he just decided that he was going to completely devote his life, dedicate his life to a spiritual path. He met a lovely Spanish chap who started to talk with him about astral projection, and he went on to Dharamsala. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. In North India, where he received a beautiful blessing from the Dali Lama. And that evening, he had his first astral projection experience. This had a massive impact on James's life, and it took away his fear. It took away his fear for death. And we chatted all about the importance of taking care of your physical body. We spoke about yoga, and we got into chatting about Kundalini yoga, that feminine energy, that movement of moon energy, that movement of energy that moves from the base chakra, that wheel of energy, up through those wheels of energy, those chakras, and how that brings our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system into balance, taking us out of that fight or flight response that is so dangerous for our bodies. You know, that stress response is what's causing the majority of dis-ease. And I say dis-ease because we're at dis-ease, aren't we? We're not at ease with ourselves when we're in that state. And how not only does it take us out of that stress response, but it gives us an opportunity to see that the trauma, the pain, the challenges that we have in life are actually initiations or opportunities for us to grow or develop. But we had such an amazing conversation, and we didn't get a chance to finish the story of James's journey in India. So I am absolutely delighted to have you back on the show today, James.
Thank you, Amanda.
We're delighted to have you back on Radio Shields, and we're even more delighted to be having James on every month. He's going to be on every second Wednesday of the month, so do listen. And if you are following James, we will be making these interviews available on our website. That's the Radio Shields website. They'll be also available on my podcast, and James is going to post it out on his YouTube channel too. So please do watch, and if you do have any questions for James for our Wednesday spots, do reach out, do get in touch with us at Radio Shields, or get in touch with James directly. We would love to answer your questions as well. But James, thank you so much. It's actually Sunday morning. We're doing a bit of a pre-record today, and James is giving up his Sunday morning to chat with me today. So thank you, James.
Thank you, Amanda, for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Again?
Absolute pleasure. So we were telling us all about your journey, and we got to a part of your journey that was a defining moment, really. You'd had this spiritual awakening. You'd had this incredible initiation into Nanda yoga.
Yogananda's Kriya Yoga.
Sorry,
Yeah.
keep me right on the pronunciations of
In
things.
Rishikesh, yeah.
And you'd also had your first experience of astral projection. That must have been like a really powerful moment in your life, like a really kind of defining moment in your life.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. It's when you do something first time in your life, and it might be, for example, like, I'm going to use it as an example, losing your virginity. If it's obviously a positive experience, you're always going to remember that moment. So for me, it was just one of those moments that I'll never forget. And it was one of the most powerful astral projections I've had overall. So yeah, it just, what you realize is that there are all these different levels of reality. There are all these different realms, all superimposed on top of each other. Because if you look at non-duality and the physical world, they're like the two extremes: the physical world, the 3D, and then this realm of nothingness, of stillness, of pure consciousness, which is kind of devoid of any phenomena, of any creation. But actually, in between those realms, those two extremes, you have all these different worlds and different dimensions. And when you astral project and when you dream, you're going into the fourth dimension, the astral realm, where beings exist. And it's the realm of emotion and the realm of thought and the realm of intent. So emotions and these thoughts have physical form, and that's why people can see energy who are kind of connected to these realms. Some people have those psychic gifts where they can actually see color and the physical shapes and movement of energy, because their consciousness is tuned in, because it is like a radio station. It's tuned into a different dimension of reality. And at the minute, we're all tuned into radio shields that we're tuned into. It's just like being tuned into the station. We're tuned into 3D. So everything we see is the physical 3D realm. But when we're in that sort of dream state, the state in between sleep, the meditative state, the shamanic journeying state, which is kind of alpha waves going into theta, then the dial on the brain is changing and is tuning in to a different frequency, literally different wavelength frequency of reality, and they all exist on top of each other. So that's often what can happen when we dream, when we meditate, when we journey. We can start to connect to different energies, different beings. We can start to become aware of different energies around us, or interacting with these different energies. So to kind of have this, to enter into this new world, and it is essentially entering into a new world, you become multi-dimensional. So we're not just living in 3D, but you start to live in other realities. You start to live in these sort of slightly high frequency realities. And so the dream work, you have to ask, are you more alive when you dream, or are you more alive when you're awake in the 3D? And they say this in the Hindu text. They say, actually, most of us think we're awake when we're actually dreaming, and when we're dreaming, we're actually awake, because say that fourth dimension, that astral realm, is more representative or closer to actual source, or that pure place of pure consciousness. So yeah, it's fascinating. And again, if we look at those more advanced yoga philosophies, or not yoga philosophies, Indian philosophies, they talk about that actually everything is a dream, everything is an illusion, everything is consciousness. So this idea of physicality is an illusion of the senses, and in reality we are actually dreaming everything. all the time.
We've kind of like science has kind of grasped some of those concepts as well. You know, the idea that everything that we experience is an illusion as such, because everything that we experience is filtered, if you like, by our senses, our physical senses.
Exactly.
What we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell is all processed by our brain. It's all processed by our mind, and therefore it's all about perception, isn't it? It's about
100%.
what we perceive, and our perception of the world is how we understand our world. It's how we exist in our world, but it's not necessarily the truth or the reality, is it? And I think what you're saying is that the work that you did opened you up to a different truth or new realities. Would that
100%.
be yeah?
100%. Yeah. And it does help to break down your structure that you already have in your mind, that fixed, belief in just the physical or just the material. But certainly, we all have our own filters based on our upbringing, based on our conditioning. So we're all seeing the world differently anyway, through our own lenses.
Yes,
and those lenses are formed based on our past experiences. So we can look at, say you could watch something on the news or anything, just the way we interact with anyone or anything. And we're all going to see that thing slightly differently based on, again, the lenses of our past experiences that will influence how we see the world. But again, they talk about it's not that this 3D world is false, as some of the Indian philosophies say, that it's pure illusion, Maya. It's just complete. It's not important. It's just an illusion. And the tantric schools talk about it's not, the physical world is not an illusion, but it's just a very small percentage, or just a very limited view and perception on the bigger picture, on the infinite reality that we live within. But this is the game. It's like a computer game, a virtual reality game, where this is the framework for which we have to move and work and go through the levels, go up the levels of growth and healing and evolution and expansion. So we work within this framework, but as we start to move up those levels, we start to acquire skills, we start to heal, we start to have these experiences, and then we start to work on these other planes of reality as well as the 3D. So for me, sleep is a sacred, it's like a ceremony. I always do a ritual before I sleep. I wear white, I always burn incense, and it's kind of, it's like, is the dreaming world, is that the true kind of the waking state, and this the dream? Again, you can get quite deep in those questions, but certainly those kind of experiences, and anyone who dreams vividly or lucidly can understand that when you start to become conscious in your dreams, you can start to manipulate your dreams. And then there's a great movie called The Waking Life, and it's about a guy. It's done in Photoshop, so it's a bit cartoony, but he's trapped in a lucid dream, and he has all these philosophical conversations and things. It's really a great movie. But yeah, certainly when I went from Rishikesh to Dharamsala and learned astral projection, again, it formed a big foundation and a big component of my spiritual journey, certainly for those next years in India.
I feel like at that point you must have like just dipped your toe in the ocean of knowledge that there is out there, just kind of like that first initiation, that step into that spiritual journey. So what happened next?
So next, well, after Dharamsala, I was already in the mountains. I went to Nepal, and I did Vipassana, the 11 day meditation retreat, where you meditate for something ridiculous like 10-12 hours a day. It's brutal. And I think in the West they're a little bit more lenient with how many hours you meditate for, but I was in Kathmandu, you had to sit literally 10-12 hours a day. It was very, very strong, but it teaches you how to sit, teaches you how to meditate. I didn't have any amazing experiences because I was in quite a lot of discomfort for a lot of the time, but it teaches you how to sit. So that was great. And then I met some friends there on the retreat, and we decided to go trekking into the Himalayas, to the Annapurna base camp, the Annapurna mountain range.
Wow.
So in Nepal, you have Annapurnas and you have Everest. They're the main sort of base camps, the main ranges. So that was incredible. And that's when I was having some of those Kundalini experiences that I mentioned. And it's just that sense of freedom and being like in the Himalayas and the awe of nature. And just one night I got lost in the woods. I had to sleep out in the forest. It's apparently a bear infested forest. It was just like that adventure and being able to do that. And I managed to get back the next day, but it was phenomenal being up in the mountains and connected to spirit in a different way through nature. And then I went back to Rishikesh, and I was generally in just a very peaceful state. I was very content. And I was like, right, I'm going to go to China. And I was like, why did you want to go to China? But I thought like China's a country that intimidated me. And by then I'd already knew, I'd made up my mind that I was going to study in Varanasi in India. But I wanted another experience and to earn some more money and just have another experience. So I went to China for a year, into Guangzhou, which is also known as, it's the old Canton, so it's very close to Hong Kong. It's also known as Sin City. So it's this monster of a city, like toxic, just massive city.
Very industrial area, isn't it?
Very industrial, yeah. And China's just kind of up and coming. So it was very modernized, but they seem to have more pollution than, say, we would have in the West or in the Western cities. So I kind of try to bring that squeaky clean yogic lifestyle and way of life into my time in China, in Guangzhou. And I started to learn Tai Chi and all these things, which was great. I'd done a bit of Tai Chi before, as my dad is a Tai Chi teacher. But after a couple of months, I was sharing an apartment with this Canadian guy, and he was a bit of a party animal. And there were about 30 of us from England, America, Australia, all together for this company that I worked for. And after a couple of months, something just snapped. I couldn't keep up with this lifestyle. You know, the environment does play a massive part into your psyche, into your energy. And so I just thought, I just ended up partying, and I had a great time for those few months. And there's no closing time in the club. So we'd be coming home at like 7, 8 in the morning and just really enjoy myself. And I was in a good place from all the work I'd done in India. But quite quickly, it only took a few months, I began just to really feel very uncomfortable in myself. And I just was not happy. I can't remember a time where I've not been comfortable in my own company. But after those few months of partying, and I was unhappy. And I use the analogy of, you going to the top of a cliff, you're going to the edge of a cliff, and then just something small happened. I just fell off the cliff, psychologically, emotionally. And then that was at the end of the first semester. And then I went to Thailand and met my family, and I kind of fell off the edge of the cliff. And I was like, I can't go back and do what I was doing there in China. So the second semester, I was a lot more sort of a calmer. I started to focus again on my health, and just chilled out a lot. But China, it really brought up a lot of my demons. It was like I went to my own personal hell in many ways. There's something about the psyche there in a big city. You know, in the countryside, it's beautiful and people are beautiful and they have their traditions and their culture. But in the city, coming from India, where it was so beautiful and so much color and so much passion, so much laughter and just madness, but you feel alive when you're in India. And then China, it was very difficult. Being in a city in itself is very difficult. I'm really not a city person, but there was there was almost like a sadness in China, a lack of color, a lack of life, a lack of soul, to be completely honest. And there's various other things that happened, which just I found it very difficult. And it was a trial, but it came to an end, and I was very happy to leave China. And it was a good experience. I learned a lot and had a lot of fun.
So that was your kind of trial. We were talking about how the world, the universe gives you these difficult times where there are opportunities, aren't they? Those difficult times are opportunities to learn and to grow. I guess China must have been one of those big opportunities for you to really to learn about what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and really focus on where you wanted to go, which was back to India.
yeah 100%. And I think you have to go through those trials, and you have to, it's like we were saying in the first interview, face your shadow and see, there'll be times in your life where your shadow, your own personal demons are externalized, and I found that in China. So it's kind of like when I went back to India, to Varanasi, to start studying, I almost felt like I'd kind of gone back to square one in a sense. I'd had this amazing journey for a year and a half, and then China just, again, like falling off the cliff, and I had to start climbing again. But, you talk about this spiral of evolution that hopefully when you start the journey again, you start slightly on a higher playing field than when you first started.
I often talk about hitting the reset button with my clients. It's not that you've lost what you've learned, or you've lost what you gained. You've just been through a difficult time, and that's all right. You hit the reset button and you start again. And I remember when I was studying traditional Chinese medicine, I was presented with the kind of the basic philosophy of yin and yang, and then went through all these years of study, and then I just had this real, it's yin and yang, isn't it? Kind of had to go
Everything's yin and yang.
Well, now I get it. I had this moment of like just realization where I went right back to the very beginning, right back to the first day, if you like, of study, and it all kind of made perfect sense. I think that's what kind of happens to us, isn't it? Sometimes when we've been through difficult or challenging experiences, we hit the reset button, or we have that kind of like, awakening, that eyes open experience. Oh, right.
Exactly.
Yes. That's what it's all about.
I think life is 3 steps forwards, 2 steps back, especially when you're first on this journey, and you'll meet challenges, and your karma comes up in can be quite challenging ways. So maybe even the first 10 years of your life, when you're dedicating yourself to the spiritual path, 5-10 years. Well, this is how it was for me personally. You'll always have karmic occurrences in your life, and certainly relationships are a good example. But certainly in those early days where you've got more karma to work through, it can be incredibly challenging, and you hit these brick walls, and you come face to face with the demons, and then you have to you might take a fall, and then you just have to get back up, and it's just being able to get yourself to get back up and to continue. Say you're dealing with addictions, or you're dealing with a diet, or you're dealing with a health regime, and you have a bad day, you have a bad week, you have a bad month, and not beating yourself up too much about that, and just getting back on the saddle, and just to continue, and hopefully each time you'll be able to push the boundary a little bit more, and go that little step further. So going to back to India, and then to Varanasi, which is probably the holiest city in India. It's also known as Kashi, the city of light. It's in the north, and it's famous for the Ganges. The Ganga goes through it, and of course the Ganges is a very sacred manifestation of the divine feminine in India. And it's famous also for its burning ghats. So when the philosophy is, when Hindus die and they're burnt in the ghats, the burning ghats, the cremated there and put into the Ganges, then it helps to create get rid of their karma and leads to moksha, which is freedom, liberation.
Wow.
So it's a very powerful, very it's quite abrasive. It's quite a very intense city, Varanasi, and a lot of people feel intimidated. Even before you've been, it just has this reputation of being a very intense, quite full-on place. And I remember what a friend mentioned, oh, you should study in Varanasi, and I hadn't been, but I just immediately just dismissed that. I thought, no, there's no way I can study in Varanasi. I knew there was a university there. But after visiting Varanasi before I went to China, it's a beautiful, the university is massive, very green, and it's quite peaceful. That's down towards the university in terms of the Ghats there. So yeah, I moved to Varanasi and studied. I went to university there, BHU, Banaras Hindu University, which is one of the biggest universities in India, and studied first year postgrad diploma in Indian philosophy and religion, because I hadn't done philosophy or religion before at university. So, and then I was qualified to do the 2-year MA program in the same subject, Indian philosophy and comparative religion. So kind of covered the world religions more briefly, and then went into a lot more depth into Indian philosophy and some of the famous texts that kind of support these schools of philosophy. And again, it's a big subject.
These texts that you were reading, like, how old are they? How far back do they go? Where do they come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in terms of the Vedic culture, the Indian Vedic culture, we're looking, the thing is, it was an oral tradition. It's passed down, and they actually call Hinduism is referred to as Sanatana Dharma, which means the eternal path, the eternal religion. So the idea is that these teachings are from time immemorial, but we have the Vedic culture really start to become prominent around 1500 BC. So really from that period, 1500 BC to up until modern day, you have a lot of these great schools of philosophy and traditions and texts. So the Vedas are very much like, in a sense, what the Old Testament is like, or the Old and New Testament is like for us. It's their ancient texts. And then you have books like the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads. The Upanishads are part of the Vedas. They're a bit more modern in their philosophy. And you could maybe, if you wanted to compare them to the New Testament, you could do, in a sense, to help understand their tradition. And so the Vedas are kind of hymns and mantras and songs to the deities. It's very shamanic. It works with like the nature gods, and god of the rain and god of the water, god of god of sun, fire, Agni, and then but it evolves to more this non-dualistic philosophy, the philosophy of the Upanishads, Vedanta, which is one of the schools of philosophy. So yeah, it was phenomenal. They said there are 6 orthodox schools of philosophy in India, which means they take the Vedas as authoritative. And that includes things like yoga, Patanjali's yoga, Raja Yoga, Vedanta, and so there are some other schools. And then you have the non-orthodox schools of philosophy, which include the Buddhist schools, Jainism, which is a religion of India, and Chavaka, which is materialism. And then you have separately, you have Tantra and Kashmir Shaivism, which became my preferred school of philosophy. It's absolutely incredible. So, those 3 years of studies, I really just got my head down, and I really enjoyed university and learning all these different philosophies, reading all these texts, and just really learning much more about the Indian philosophical tradition. And I was getting all the answers that I was originally yearning for. And so it was very mind expanding. And I felt like as we were going through the different schools of the different texts, I was it was almost like I was downloading the information. I was embracing what was being conveyed in these texts. And when I was quite disciplined with my yoga and my meditation. And then that to learn and to expand your consciousness is a form of yoga. It's Gyan yoga, which is the yoga of wisdom, the yoga of knowledge. So it's like when I was referring to reading the I Am That book by Nisargadatta Maharaj. When you start to understand this, when you understand these concepts, it can be very liberating. And they say in Indian philosophy that whether they believe in God or not, they all recognize that the soul is divine, and we are in a state of avidya, of ignorance as to our true nature. And it's gyan, it's knowledge that sets us free ultimately.
Okay.
So there are different ways, different paths you can find and discover that knowledge. And again, you have those bhakti, devotion, gyan, wisdom, karma yoga, yoga of action, and raja yoga, which is like the Patanjali's yoga, what we start to understand more as yoga in the West. But there are these different paths that all lead to the same goal, which is to recognize yourself as divine, as opposed to, this physical body, this mind, and these things. So, yeah, it was a great 3 years, and I started to then get back and go further and push the boundaries more than I ever had done as I was going deeper into these schools of philosophy and doing retreats. I was also studying a tradition outside of university that we did cover it briefly at university called Kashmir Shaivism, which is a tantric school of philosophy, and it's a non-dualistic school. So you only have 3 or 4 non-dualistic schools. You only have really 2 Hindu non-dualistic schools. Okay. Vedanta, which is very famous. People like Eckhart Tolle and Muji, and a lot of the more modern spiritual teachers are Vedantins. Vedanta means end of the Vedas, so that's the Upanishads and using the Gita. And then you have Tantra, Kashmir Shaivism from Kashmir, and that works with Shiva, Shakti, and consciousness and energy, and it's the most sublime philosophy that I've ever studied. It's the only philosophy that I can say is perfect. It's absolutely beautiful, and it kind of is the grandfather and forms the foundation for yoga and understanding reality, because again it embraces life, it embraces nature, embraces the body, seeing it as divine, whereas Vedanta says, oh, everything's an illusion, just focus on your meditation and spirit, because the world is Maya, is an illusion. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. Obviously, you could spend hours and hours talking about these different.
So one of the philosophies kind of like says that the world isn't just an illusion, and that you should focus on your spiritual growth. And the other philosophy says that. Tell me again. Put it into kind of more.
Yeah. So arguably the two most advanced schools of philosophy in India. You have Vedanta, and there are many schools within Vedanta, the umbrella. But Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, it says that Jagat Mithya, the world is an illusion. Yeah, Brahma Satyam, Brahman, source, is the only reality, and the world is an illusion. And so, in that respect, you're taught to not worry about the physical, not worry about the body. Just sit in meditation, do self-inquiry. Who am I? Am I the body? No. Am I the mind? No. Oh, what am I? Well, I am. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. I am the infinite. And it's through the mind. It's through the intellect. It's through meditation that you come to this realization that you are source. Yeah, and everything is source, and everything. Fine. The world of illusion is an illusion. Tantra, which is more relevant now and more relevant to the West, says that yes, you are source, and source is all that there is, but creation, the world, people, the body, animals, nature, everything is also divine. Everything is an expression of divinity. How can you say the world is an illusion when everything is divine, everything is source? So Tantra, and understanding what is Tantra. Tantra, tanoti, the 2 verbs, and trayati. Tanoti means the expansion of consciousness. Trayati, the liberation of energy. So it's simply working with energy and consciousness, not just consciousness, if that makes sense. So you work with the body, you embrace the body. Yoga is tantric. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that embraces reality, anything that embraces the body, any sort of yogic discipline which has its as its goal to release, let's think about this, expand your consciousness. That's to heal your trauma, to expand your beliefs, to break down fixed beliefs that you may have. And as you do this, you liberate energy in the body. The trauma that's trapped in the body is crystallized in the body.
Yeah.
Toxicity is then released and purged. And so as you heal your body, you're expanding your mind. And as you expand your mind, you're healing your body. So they say, the Tantras say, what is the point of enlightenment if you don't enlighten the body? Like, the idea is therefore that the body has to come with you. It's not just enlighten your mind and just, you know, just neglect the body. You embrace the body and you bring the body with you. And so it's a lot more challenging in that respect, but also the payoffs are greater, because they say when you do this, you develop power, develop powers, siddhis. And then, of course, you have to be responsible in the way you start to deal with some of these.
Well, I think if you're physically healthier and you're not carrying trauma around with you, and you're gonna feel empowered, you're gonna feel healthier, you're gonna feel more powerful. So, just from a practical perspective as well, I can just see that, you know, when as a massage therapist, I see a lot of people carrying neck and shoulder tension as a kind of, our neck is our kind of most, if an animal was going to have you for its breakfast, it would probably pick you up and break your neck. So if we're feeling under attack in any way, shape or form, we need to protect the part of us that's the most vulnerable, and that's our neck. So what we tend to do is we tighten our jaw, we pull our shoulders up, and we kind of make armor of the big muscles around our neck and shoulder area, and they got hard and solid, and that feels really painful. And I see a lot of people are just carrying all that trauma and tension in their bodies. And when you can release that,
100%,
that makes people feel so much better and so much more powerful. But this is taking it to the next level, isn't it? Of releasing the physical trauma, having the understanding that we're all divine, and looking for that personal journey, I guess, to finding that knowledge so that we can grow and develop. That definitely it resonates more with me.
I think in the West it is more applicable, and in the East now, because there's a kind of almost like a revolution of their traditional of Vedanta, Neo-Vedanta.
Wow.
But yeah, like you were saying, that starts to then tie in the chakras, which of course are directly related to these systems, are part of the system. You know, and people are holding tension around the shoulders and the upper back. That's like closing the heart, and in the throat and the neck, it's the throat chakra. So, sorry, speaking your mind, exactly, expressing yourself, going on the radio, doing podcasts. So that's all part of the journey. And so then you can start to go deeper into the yoga practice and into the chakras, and start to, well, actually we hold different types of tensions and different types of emotions in different parts of the body. So then you can start to understand more about yourself when you know where you hold your tension, and recognize that each chakra has its own psychology, its own consciousness. And then you can start to work with yoga and these healing modalities to start to free up specific traumas based in specific areas of the body. And that is a big part of what I teach in retreats and in class, is that evolution through the chakras. And again, that's probably something for another show or several shows, because it's fascinating. You could talk about it, you know, for a long time, but I'm more than happy to go into that another
That would
time.
be amazing. That would be amazing. I've been doing some chakra dancing over
very nice.
the Christmas period.
Lovely, yeah.
Each day I did a different chakra, and it's great. I love it.
Did you find any chakras that particularly resonated with you, or that you felt you needed to do you really enjoyed, or you need to do some more work with?
Yeah, definitely. There were
Mm,
certain pieces of music and certain meditations as a part of what I was working that just felt slightly uncomfortable for me.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
discomfort, that disease, that
Mm,
discomfort kind of indicated to me areas that I need to work on, definitely.
mm,
It really opens your eyes when you start doing this kind of work. And I tell you what, it's absolutely joyful. I loved it. It was so
yeah.
much fun as well.
Mm,
And good for me physically because I need to move my physical body more. But speaking of bodies and health, in addition to studying at university out there, you also really studied Ayurvedic medicine as well, didn't
mm.
you? Tell
Yeah,
me a little
that's
bit about that.
absolutely. So during the holidays, and it was getting too hot in Varanasi, I'd go to the north, back to Rishikesh, and then back to Dharamsala. And that's when I'd really study the yoga and Ayurveda. So I did a number of different Ayurveda courses. I was learning massage, but also going into the science and the philosophy of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda and yoga go really well together. Ayurveda is the medicine, the traditional medicine of India, and again, it's as old as the Vedas, so it's ancient. And Ayur means life, or the longevity of life, and Veda means wisdom. So the Vedas literally means wisdom or knowledge. So it's the wisdom of life, or the wisdom of the longevity of life. And
Mm.
so to study that, it was very enlightening, and it assisted me on my own journey of healing and health. And then it's been a big part again of what we teach now in Harrogate, and we have Ayurvedic yoga retreats where we teach Ayurveda, which is more lifestyle, and then yoga. I mean, traditionally yoga it wasn't necessarily about the physical body. It was more about going into higher states of consciousness. It was a path to enlightenment, whereas the Ayurveda was more about keeping your body healthy, looking at diet and lifestyle. But of course, the physical aspect of yoga is very good for the body as well. So Ayurveda, again, it's still very much practiced in India. It's still very big there, as well as the allopathic Western approach to medicine. But really, Ayurveda, it focuses more on prevention, and it's about coming into balance and into harmony with your environment based on your own particular expression of energy. It recognizes, and I think I can't think of any other systems of diet that recognize everyone is different, everyone is unique. Yeah, so we're all slightly different, and it's based on the elements. So it's called the Pancha Mahabhuta, the 5 great elements. And you see the elements in all traditions. In the West, in science now, with the Platonic solids, recognizing that these actually form the foundation of the periodic table, and they know this through science now. And it's in Western magic and the Kabbalistic Western mystical traditions. It's in obviously Chinese system, and so these 5 building blocks of reality, the 5 elements, it's physics, it's science. And in the East, they have a different way of understanding, of course. So you have obviously earth, water, fire, air, and ether, space. And what they recognize in Ayurveda and in all Indian philosophies, actually, that reality is based on these elements. And in Ayurveda, it goes one step further and recognizes that these elements kind of combine into 3 categories. And these 3 categories are known as doshas. And we all typically fit into one, or we have a primary and a secondary dosha. And that can help us understand who we are genetically, biologically, how we were born, just our nature, our prakriti, our nature. So when you know your dosha, then you understand a lot more about yourself, and then you know what you need to do to counteract certain potential issues you're having. For example, when I first went to India, I used to get a lot of skin issues. I used to get these horrible burning blisters on my skin. It was horrible. It was miserable. And I was like, why on earth am I getting these horrible skin issues, complaints? And then when I started to learn Ayurveda, I recognized that I am a pitta, which is fire and water. And of course, I was eating all the Indian foods, very
Spicy.
oily, very spicy, very hot. And it's like if someone's already hot, like really hot, and then you're adding more heat on top of that, you get this overflowing of heat. The body can't deal with the heat. And so it comes out of the skin. Because obviously it's in the blood and the liver, it's connected to the liver. So once I understood that, then obviously I cut out all those foods that were aggravating the pitta. And so you're coming into balance, into harmony, into resonance with your inner and outer environment. And of course, India is also very hot as an environment. So it was like double, triple heat, fire, all on top of each other. And so once I understood, okay, I need to balance my pitta, I need more cooling foods and more a cooling lifestyle, if you like, then it completely sorted all of that out. So it's fascinating. And it's all about, again, balancing the elements, balancing the energies based on your particular dosha.
It's really good, isn't it, to have that kind of guide, and it takes into consideration your body shape, your lifestyle, how you respond to different situations or circumstances. It really is a very holistic, whole body way of looking at who you are, and then that information, that knowledge about what who you are within that medical system gives you that information about how you can then move forward and make better and healthier choices.
Absolutely.
Absolutely fascinating. So when we air this, it will have just entered into the new year.
Yes, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
2020 is a new decade.
No, it's so exciting. 2020. Oh my goodness.
Good year.
And it's going to be an amazing year. And I really believe that this is the year that people are going to wake up to these kinds of approaches to their health, to their mental well-being. And, you know, I bet you there's a few people listening to the show tonight who have set those New Year's resolutions. Let's hope they weren't too torturous and terrible. Yeah. And perhaps if you've been listening to the show, you'll have maybe taken on board some of those tips about being kind to yourself and self-love and self-compassion as your New Year's resolution. But I mean, as we're moving into this fantastic new year, how can Ayurveda help us?
How can Ayurveda help you? Well, I think firstly you need to kind of know what your dosha is. Because if you don't have that, then it's difficult to then balance your lifestyle.
Okay, how would I find that out? Can I do some research?
Yeah, there are questionnaires you can do online. We have retreats we do for a year in Harrogate, the Yorkshire Centre for Wellbeing, where we go into that and we go through Ayurveda and look at people's doshas and then give the information there. So again, it's all about coming into balance with your environment. And what they do say in Ayurveda is that anything that we can't digest, that can be food, that can be emotions, that can be stress, mental stress, leads to toxicity. Right. And we need the ability to digest that which we're experiencing. Again, food is the main thing, but also stress and the emotions that we experience. And if we don't, we get what's called ama, which is toxicity. And that buildup of toxicity over time, it then leads to illness. So they have this step-by-step process in Ayurveda, these 6 stages of disease. That it starts with, you have the accumulation of toxins, and then it aggravates, goes into the blood, then it migrates to a particular part of the body, and then you start to get symptoms, and then you get disease, and then it's incurable or death. So essentially what we're looking to do, we don't want to be getting to those 5th and 6th stages of disease and incurable. We want to detoxify the body and keep those toxins to a minimum if we can. And things are reversible. So if you have had been doing things which have been putting you out of balance or having symptoms and illness, you can reverse that. So looking at it as essentially in Ayurveda, recognizing that it's that buildup of things that we can't digest in our lives, of putting stuff into the body which is toxic for the body, and starting to look at how we can reverse that, and to remove stress, to remove those negative scenarios and situations. It could be work, it could be a relationship, it could be whatever, it could be just watching crap on the TV. All these things are leaving an impression in the body and in the psyche. So if we can just start to become aware that, again, we're a holistic system, and our thoughts and our emotions and our environment and stress and what we eat, what we drink, when we eat, how much we eat, it all has a direct influence, not just on our physical health, but also on our subtle energy, on our psyche, on our emotions. And recognizing that really, that everything you do is going to influence you some way. You know, every interaction, everything that you eat, drink, where you live, the people you spend time with, the work that you do, it's all having an influence, for the better or for worse, on your system as a whole. So, you know, and you know when you're in balance because you feel happy, you feel energized, yeah, you feel positive, and you know when you're out of balance because you're ill. So if you're getting ill a lot, or you're getting stressed a lot, then you've got to look at, well, what is it in my environment that's creating this? And over time, this leads to illness and disease. And that's why we see a lot of people who come to our center. They've ignored the signals of the body. They've ignored the emotions. They've ignored the stress. And if you ignore that, you're building up your toxins, you're building up the imbalance, and eventually, sooner or later, the dam will burst and people can get ill, seriously ill sometimes.
I think culturally we're kind of we're geared up to ignore these things. That whole stiff upper lip, we just get on with things. I don't let it bother me. I just get on with it. Try and ignore things. You know, people plow through their days exhausted, but keep going. Have 10 extra cups of coffee. And it feels dangerous to me.
Definitely.
That kind of lifestyle. And I just hear every day so many people tell me, you know, I got up in the morning, I was still exhausted, but I went and did a 13-hour day and I drank 20 cups of coffee to get me through. Aren't I brilliant? And I think, yes, but that's so taking you into that journey. It's taking you on that dangerous path towards disease, towards possibly an early death. And really, what did you achieve? Was it that important?
Exactly. And then you have to look at the beliefs that lead to that kind of behavior, because a lot of us feel guilt about not doing something, not being busy. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure to work hard, to earn money, to support ourselves. And there's issues with abundance. So there are all these beliefs that it's the fear and anxiety that create these actions and create these approaches to life. And when we start to, again, self-inquire, we start to look at our beliefs. Where is our sense of self-worth coming from externally? What is it that we have to have externally to feel good about ourselves? Good job, reputation, nice car, you know, all these things are external things that it's like, well, can't you find that sense of self-worth from within? You know, but because we all have trauma, we all have had conditioning, we all have a story. And so you know, certainly before we start this journey, everything is externalized. We get our sense of self, our identity, and our self-worth from things externally to us. And so when we start to heal the past, and we just bring more love to ourselves, and that allows us to bring more love to other people, then we're less dependent on the external, and we move from an internal loci as opposed to so easily influenced, for better or worse, by the external. But certainly Ayurveda, I would encourage people to really pay attention to how they're feeling emotionally, psychologically, physically, as frequently as you can. Just check in with yourself. Do you need to drink loads of coffee just to get through the day? And then that's going to fry your adrenal system and your nervous system. You know, it's not a long-term solution. Again, we were talking about it our last interview, where, you know, we want to get out of fight, flight, freeze, sympathetic nervous system with adrenaline and cortisol pumping through our veins. We want to be able to go into that more parasympathetic state, or get more balance between the two. But again, it's difficult because some people are locked into the matrix and locked in. And if you have responsibilities and things like that, you know, you have to work, you have to do this, that, the other. But it's ultimately, I believe we're all here. We all have a dharma. We all have a duty. We all have a mission. We all have a destiny. And ultimately, it's what we're most passionate about. And you can make a living from what you're most passionate about. You're doing it. I'm doing it.
Certainly am.
Exactly. And life, life becomes so much more joyful when obviously what you spend most of your day doing, your work, is also your passion. And that path, that dharma, then will lead you to your own healing as well, because you'll meet the right people. You'll just, life will take over at that stage. So yeah, I just encourage people to really tap in to how they're feeling, and even just having 5 minutes at the start of the day, end of the day, in the middle of the day, a few deep breaths. How am I feeling? Am I happy? You know, is this what I really want? Because the 2020s are going to be a time with all these incredible astrological alignments of people moving more into their soul path and the soul dharma, the destiny of coming into what gives them true joy and happiness, as you know, the system and the matrix starts to go through some radical changes and starts to potentially dissolve and lose its power. So we're all stepping up to the plate now. We're all stepping into our power and into our bliss and into our dharma. And yeah, I would encourage you to find that which gives you joy and passion, and really work with that and develop that. And if you're not happy in your work, or you're not well and something is not right in your environment, just do what you can to change that. Yeah,
absolutely. So find out who you are, perhaps do a bit of self-inquiry, and once you've got that knowledge and that information, and connect with your passions, connect with what you're here for, what your divine calling is, if you like, and know that you're divine. Check in with yourself that you're calm, happy, feeling well, feeling empowered. And if you're not, take those sometimes just really small and simple steps towards being healthier, being happier. I know one of the things that I experienced through my journey becoming a practitioner was I've always had, for many years, always had issues with my weight, and I know that at this time of the year a lot of people are looking to reduce their body shape and size and to become fitter and healthier. And I think I probably set a New Year's resolution every year. So this year I'm going to lose weight. This year this year. Yeah. And every year I wasn't really doing very much, and I put myself on these punishing and cruel gym regimes that worked really well, and then I'd stop going because it was painful.
Exactly, yeah.
And then it would have been a waste of time, or I would drink these crazy milkshake drinks and not eat, and then I'd be hungry and angry because I always get angry.
Yeah. But that's the thing, we can push ourselves, and that's the problem I think with New Year's resolutions. Then we beat ourselves up about it if we fail, and then we get all depressed and we beat ourselves up, and then we go back to those old habits. I think with Ayurveda and the diet of Ayurveda, you're not cutting stuff out. You're not pushing yourself and forcing yourself to do something.
Not restrictions there, are there?
It's guidelines. Yeah, it's guidelines. So, for example, you're most likely your dosha is kapha, which is earth and water. So that dosha they're very maternal and caring and loving and warm, the best immunity. It's the strongest. In the Western tradition, talk about physiology, endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph. So it's the larger boned, and that's just genetics. That's how you are, and it's actually the most robust of the doshas. However, one of the tendencies is to have too much earth in the physiology, too much, and putting on extra weight can be an issue for kapha. So there's nothing wrong. Like, people think, why do I have these weight issues? There must be something wrong with me. Well, no, actually, it's your dosha. It's your dosha to have those potential tendencies. And once you understand that, it gives very clear guidelines as what you can do to to balance the earth element and to not put on the extra weight. So for example, kapha, the food that they should avoid, unfortunately there are 6 types of foods in Ayurveda, and so sweet is one of them. And so basically kaphas want to take it easy on the things like carbs, on meat, on fats, on proteins, on milk products, you know, things like heavy pasta dishes and lots of bread and big rice dishes are gonna, because they're already earthy, that's already the earth element. So you're just like ours putting fire on fire, you're putting earth on earth. So what the kapha, to have a lighter meal, or a meal that is based more on pungent, bitter and astringent, so that would be more greens, more vegetables, you know, pungent spice. So kapha need a little bit of spice, you know, a little bit of chili, a little bit of
spice.
Yeah, a little bit of spice, a little bit of heat, because that actually helps to move things. It helps to move the circulation and the metabolism. So pungent is more your spices, astringent like some of your veg and pulses and legumes, and bitter is more like your some of your fruits and your green leafy vegetables. So, and also say kapha has this spinach, yeah, and all that good stuff. And they say kapha has the slowest metabolism of the 3 doshas. They need to sleep the longest, slowest metabolism. So therefore, whereas vata and pitta, the other 2 doshas, fire and air, they can have very strong digestions, and they need to eat 3 or sometimes more than 3 times a day, certainly for vata, which is the air type. With kapha, because it's a slower digestion, you don't need to necessarily have three meals a day. And you know, we had a friend who was coming on retreat, and she was kapha, and she had some weight issues, and she just changed her breakfast from having a normal kind of cereal breakfast to a smoothie in the morning, and then just having the 2 normal meals after. And she managed, through doing that small change, she managed to manage her weight. But certainly from my experience, managing weight often is about the size and the time of the evening meal. That really does influence things a lot. So there's this thing called, and this is according to Ayurveda as well, because your digestive enzymes and acids are most active during the middle of the day. When the sun is highest, it's the time where your fire is strongest. And also as we move into night, those enzymes are not functioning. So in Ayurveda, but also now we're looking at intermittent fasting, if you can minimize and have an earlier evening meal and a smaller and something that's not so heavy. So if you do eat meat, try and avoid eating meat in the evening because it's difficult to digest. Have something vegan or vegetarian, make it light and have it early. And if you can have a gap between when you finish your evening meal to when you have your breakfast, minimum 12 hours, which is dead easy. Actually, you know, you finish eating at 7 and you start eating at 7 in the morning, and you can expand that out to 14, 16 hours without much trouble. But that, from my experience in doing these consultations as well, is one of the easiest, because you still get all the calories that you would have normally, but you're having that big gap of not eating from your evening meal to your breakfast, or even skipping out breakfast, and that's okay for kapha dosha. Then you'll find that, I've just seen it with my own students and people that we see, just amazing results just from making these few changes to diet, these few habit changes. And again, it's just balancing your energy with the energy that, you know, is coming into you and around you. So yeah, that's definitely, look at intermittent fasting.
Amazing.
Yeah, that would
definitely. I feel really blessed because I get to chat with you, James, and I get to get all of this amazing information, which I think, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to add that. I'm going to make that little change. I'm going to do that thing in my life. That's amazing. I get to have all the best having this job. It's great for me. But James has very kindly offered to make himself available to all of our listeners. So if you're anywhere in the world listening to this, or if you're listening in North or South Shields, or if you're in any part of the UK at all, anywhere in the world actually, we would like to welcome you. Please do email us your questions. If listening to this has brought about some questions that you'd like answered, if you want to expand your knowledge so that you can continue on your divine journey, then do please get in touch with James or me. You can get in touch with me just via the Radio Shield's website, which is www.radioshield.co.uk, and you can send us an email via that Radio Shield's website, and get in touch with us that way, or you can get in touch directly with James as well. He'd be absolutely happy for you to reach out and send him your questions as well. James, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Sure, there are various ways. Certainly on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, I'm starting to be more active. So if you're just interested in kind of the work that I'm doing here, then you can find me at Gopala Yoga Harrogate. That's the Facebook, Instagram, Gopala Yoga Harrogate. And my website is gopalayoga.co.uk. And YouTube is Gopala Yoga. So Gopala is my spiritual name, Gopala. So yeah, it'll be, you're very obviously welcome to follow, and if you've got any questions, then feel free to drop me a message. The main centre where I work and run, Yorkshire Centre for Wellbeing, again, we have the website, Facebook, Instagram there. So that's another method. And you can, on my website, gopalayoga.co.uk, there's a place that you can send any questions, emails. It'd be lovely to hear from the listeners. If you've got any feedback or any questions or any comments, then it'd be great to hear from you. So yeah, that'd be awesome.
And James is going to be on the show once a month. So obviously, if you send us an email or a message, we'll ensure that James gets those questions, and he would be delighted to support you in your journey towards wellness and a better, happier, healthier life. So please do get in touch, and you don't have to add your name if you'd like to keep those questions confidential. Just let us know that too, so that we won't broadcast your name when we're answering those questions. But please do reach out. We want to help you to have that healthy, happy life. And James is so knowledgeable. Let's make the most of that and ask those burning questions, and let's address those in future shows as well. So, all I have really to say to James now is thank you. Thank you so much for coming on a Sunday morning. We're listening to this on a Wednesday evening, but I'm interviewing James on a Sunday morning. Thank you for giving up your time on a Sunday morning to chat to me and to support our listeners in their journey towards health and well-being. We are really, really grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you, Amanda. It's a great honor to be on the show, and it's an absolute pleasure. So I thoroughly enjoy doing this. It's a passion of mine, so it's no trouble whatsoever. I love to talk about these things. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And James will be on every second Wednesday of the month. So get your emails in, get your questions in, contact James or myself via the Radio Shield's website, and we will be absolutely delighted to support you and answer your questions. Thank you, James.
Cheers, Amanda. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Happy New Year, everyone.